A culture without writing can still leave a voice, and in prehistoric Japan, that voice is clay. For more than 10 millennia, communities we call the Jomon lived across the archipelago, semi-sedentary hunter-gatherers who built pit dwellings, tended shell middens, and produced some of the earliest pottery on Earth. Among their most striking creations are small clay figures we now call Dogu. They appear human or animal, highly stylized rather than realistic, and they turn up from Hokkaidō to Kyushu in settlement layers, house floors, pits, and occasionally burials. Scholars estimate that on the order of 15 to 18,000 have been recorded so far, most from eastern and northern Honshu. The sheer spread and variety of these figurines is not in doubt. What they meant and how exactly they were used remains the puzzle. To understand that puzzle, it helps to fix the frame. The Jomon period spans roughly 13,000 to 300 BCE, depending on region and scheme, an enormous sweep of time punctuated by local styles. Potters built vessels and figures by hand, coiling and modeling without the wheel, often tempering the clay with shell, mineral grit, or plant fibers, then decorating with cord impressions, applique bands, incisions, and burnishing before low-temperature firing. Traces of pigment survive on some pieces, suggesting that color once heightened surface patterns and facial markings. Within that broader ceramic tradition, Dogu developed distinct regional types: heart-shaped faces in some zones, hollow rattle torsos in others, and in the far north, the famous Hokkaidō, goggle-eyed figures whose slit-like wraparound eyes resemble snow goggles. The workmanship signals intention and skill, not casual craft. What most unsettles modern expectations, though, is how Dogu are found. Complete examples exist, but they are rare. Far more often, excavators recover fragments, limbs, torsos, heads, scattered through habitation deposits or placed in pits. At Shakadō in Yamanashi, a benchmark Middle Jomon site, archaeologists recorded 1,116 fragments, with fewer than 3% joining to reform a figure, an imbalance that is difficult to explain as mere attrition over thousands of years. Similar dispersal has been documented at other sites, where pieces found tens or hundreds of meters apart fit back together. The pattern points to deliberate breakage and distribution. That is not the same thing as proof of a single ritual, but the repeated pairing of careful making and targeted destruction asks for an explanation that goes beyond accidental damage. One influential reading treats Dogu as instruments of healing, effigies used in acts of sympathetic magic. In this view, pain or illness is transferred to a proxy, the afflicted part marked or the corresponding limb of the figure broken and separated, and the pieces then dispersed so the harm cannot reassemble. Ethnographic parallels show how widely people have imagined likeness and contact as channels of influence, and Jomon contexts do include deposits where only certain limbs are missing or where clusters of parts concentrate in house floors and middens. Seen this way, the act of breaking is not vandalism but cure, a way to draw off misfortune and physically enact its end. The neatness of the theory is tempting. The data, though, remains circumstantial. We cannot point to inscriptions that anchor intent, only to patterns that make this reading plausible. A second axis of interpretation focuses on fertility and life cycles. Many Dogu clearly emphasize female features: broad hips, swelling bellies, accentuated breasts, and some are nicknamed accordingly, like the celebrated Jomon Venus from Nagano. Phallic stone rods known as sekibo also appear in Jomon ritual contexts, suggesting a symbolic pairing of generative forces. In communities that depended on stable births, seasonal foraging, and cooperative labor, ceremonies to guard pregnancy, ensure safe delivery, and sustain abundance would make sense. Within that logic, the purposeful breaking of a figure could mark a successful outcome. The object's power discharged, its task complete, or protect against the return of danger by dispersing the vessel that once held it. Again, the material fits the story, but the story must still leave room for exceptions and local meanings. A third perspective sees Dogu as tools of trance and communication with non-human powers, possibly in the hands of ritual specialists we would call shamans. The otherworldly qualities of many figures, mask-like faces, emphatic eyes, enveloping patterns, serpentine motifs, invite readings that stress transformation, protection, and altered states. In this framework, a figure might serve as a container or stand-in for a presence invited into a dwelling space or ritual area. Breaking and dispersing it would then be a formal dismissal, a safe ending. The argument gains traction where Dogu appear alongside other unusual items: stone circles, special lamps, lacquered ritual objects. Yet its very breadth is also a caution. Symbolism can be multivalent. Not every mask is a trance, not every snake a spirit. Amid these interpretations, the technological story offers firmer ground. Petrographic thin sections and compositional analyses show that many Dogu were made from local clays mixed with specific tempers, implying knowledgeable choices about workability and firing. Micro-wear and repair traces demonstrate handling, reuse, and in some cases, pre-breakage mending. One late Jomon figure from the north was broken and reassembled in antiquity before being deposited again. The repertoire of forming techniques, coiling, modeling, applique, perforation of joints, and sometimes hollow construction with rattling pellets, speaks to craft traditions that were transmitted and reinvented across centuries. Such consistency over vast distances suggests exchange and communication, ideas traveling between settlements, perhaps with the figures themselves. The goggles of northern Dogu, for instance, are not literal eyewear, but a stylized convention that spread with remarkable vigor at the end of the Jomon. Context also matters. Dogu come from house floors, outdoor activity areas, storage pits, burials, and sometimes from carefully arranged caches. Where stratigraphy is secure, they cluster with other unusual objects: lamps, lacquered wood, stone tools not used for everyday cutting, hinting at spaces and moments set apart from routine tasks. Yet regional differences are obvious. Some areas favor small hand-sized figures, others produce larger hollow examples. Some styles foreground pregnancy, others suppress bodily cues in favor of geometric surface. The variety should restrain any single universal explanation. Across 10 millennia, a community can change its mind. With so much uncertainty, why do Dogu matter beyond their visual allure? Because they record choices about material, skill, and meaning made again and again by people building stable lives without agriculture as we imagine it. Their production implies knowledge of clay sources and firing environments. Their distribution implies networks of contact. Their patterned deposition implies ceremonies that knit households to wider communities. Taken together, they point to a Jomon world that was neither simple nor static. A world of villages, seasonal gatherings, and shared symbols linking distant coasts. They also challenge tired cliches about Stone Age Japan. The hands that coiled these figures worked with intention. The breakage, too, was intentional. It is equally important to say what the evidence cannot do. No text tells us the words spoken when a figure's limb was snapped, or whether a particular deposit marked thanks, mourning, or prevention. Claims that Dogu were toys, portraits, idols, or teaching tools all capture pieces of the truth. None can claim exclusivity. The strongest statement we can make is proportional. Deliberate manufacture and deliberate destruction recur together so consistently that Dogu were almost certainly bound to acts that mattered, to health, fertility, protection, remembrance, or all of these in shifting combinations. Holding to that proportionality keeps the story honest and still lets the objects speak. If you want more of this kind of evidence-led archaeology, following clay sourcing, tool marks, and depositional patterns to peel back belief and behavior, join us for the next deep dive into Japan's deep past. And tell us in the comments which line of evidence you find most convincing for Dogu. Healing proxies, fertility icons, shamanic gear, or something we've overlooked. The more we ask specific, testable questions about contexts and techniques, the closer we get to the lived reality behind these fragments. What remains certain is that the dog are not mere curiosities. They are durable residues of ceremonies enacted countless times across millennia, monuments not to kings but to practice. Hemmed with cord marks and red traces, modeled with care and then cracked with care, they continue to oblige us to think in long time about how people make meaning and how meaning leaves a mark.